Hi everyone, Megan here from Beguiled by Books. Today I'm going to share with you my September reading wrap-up and reviews. Let's get into it. In September, I read 10 books. I started by finishing the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I read Tower of Dawn and Kingdom of Ash. I really liked both of those books. They are the longest books in the series, I believe. And I did feel that maybe they could be a little bit shorter. Some parts slowed me down, especially in Kingdom of Ash, where there were scenes that were repeated, but from multiple points of view. That was a little bit just unnecessary in my opinion, but ultimately I loved how the story wrapped up. I really enjoyed the whole series overall. I do think the subsequent series, ACOTAR and Crescent City, are getting better as Sarah J. Maas gets better. So excited for Crescent City 3 coming out in January 2024, but Throne of Glass was a 5 out of 5 stars for me. I also was able to read 4 advanced reader copies or galleys of books in September. The first one I read was The Heart is the Strongest Muscle by Tia Toomey. Tia Toomey is the 6-time fittest woman on earth in the CrossFit Games and the only athlete to achieve that title. I've been following the CrossFit Games for 10 or 12 years, and I really enjoy the athleticism and the competition. And I was super excited to get this ARC. However, it fell a little flat for me. It was kind of a memoir, kind of a self-help, inspirational book. And honestly, I think it failed at being both. It didn't do either one particularly well. If you're new to CrossFit or you really like sports memoirs, this might be a really great read for you. Unfortunately, it just missed the mark for me, so I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. The other ARC I read in September is The Helsinki Affair by Anna Pitoniak. This one was a 5 stars out of 5 for me. I really enjoyed the female spy protagonist setup of the book. There were conflicts of interest for the characters. All the characters were really interesting and well developed. I thought the twists and turns were really good. You kept guessing at kind of what was going to happen next and didn't really know. So I really enjoyed this overall. I gave it 5 out of 5 again, and a fun, different type of spy book if you're used to the traditional kind of white male protagonist view of things. The next ARC I read in September is Super Communicators by Charles Duhigg. Charles Duhigg is really well known for his book, The Power of Habit, which teaches people how to build good, positive habits. So I was really happy to get this as an ARC. Unfortunately, I think it fell a little flat for me. I don't think I'm the right person for this book. If you've never read business or leadership or communication books, you will get a ton of good information out of Super Communicators. I read a lot in this genre, so it just wasn't anything new or groundbreaking or revelatory for me. I gave it 4 stars for the potential, but for me, it just kind of was a bit of a forgettable book, unfortunately. The last ARC I read in September was Not Forever, But For Now by Chuck Palahniuk. Palahniuk is probably most famous for his book Fight Club, which was the catalyst for the very popular movie with Brad Pitt and Edward Norton. He also wrote Choke and Lullaby, 2 other really popular books. And if you've read any of his works, you know that it is very non-traditional, and Not Forever, But For Now follows that same type of non-traditional story. It was probably the most bonkers book I've read in a very long time. I'm still processing it. It was a really weird book, and I really loved it. The characters are awful. You absolutely hate them, but you're supposed to. I winced. I cringed. It made me feel icky and gross, and it was just, honestly, like, the story was so well done that you believed these characters could exist, and that makes you feel not great. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It's going to stay with me for a long time. It's super weird. All the trigger warnings, if you decide to read it though, just putting that out there, all the trigger warnings, but really, really well done at the end of the day. In addition to those books, I also read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So very popular book. If you've seen it, I'm sure on Bookstagram or Book Talk and on BookTube. So you've seen it all over the place. It's well worth the hype. It is such a good book, very fast paced, rarely a dull moment. I read it in 2 days. It was excellent. I'm so excited for book 2, Iron Flame, coming out in November 2023. I'll do a whole video on Fourth Wing alone, and 5 out of 5 stars, can't complain. I also read Legacy by James Kerr. This is a business book, but it focuses on the organizational culture of the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team. So it really looks at how they went from just a run-of-the-mill rugby team in New Zealand to the world's winningest sports team. Really enjoyed this. I have a special place in my heart for New Zealand and Maori culture as well. I also tend to really like business and organizational culture books. So this merged a lot of my favorite things together. And it distilled a lot of great information from other business books into this with the analogy of sports, especially rugby. So I really like this one. I thought it was well done. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Another book I read in September was An Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. A friend of mine recommended this book to me, and I got it from my local library. And this book was really well done, very haunting from the perspective of what most American students have been taught is a very whitewashed, Eurocentric, colonialized version of what actually happened when the United States was founded as the United States. And there is a whole history of peoples that was completely wiped out. The peoples themselves were wiped out. And this book dives into what that looks like and how that has affected our nation as it is today. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It's going to stay with me for a very long time, and everyone should read it to understand how truly history is really written by the winners, and we've lost so much by wiping out an entire peoples from this colonization. And the last book I read in September is Fairy Tale by Stephen King. This was my first Stephen King novel. I really, really enjoyed it. It was a wonderful amalgamation of many different fairy tales that were both overtly and subtly referenced throughout the book. It was a dark take on a fairy tale, so it stayed true to the true fairy tales of our past and our history, not necessarily like the more sanitized Disney style version fairy tales. I really liked it. It was pretty quickly paced, a couple dull moments, but that's okay. It all worked really well together. And of course, in true Stephen King fashion, it was dark. It was a little bit freaky in parts, and I didn't know how it was going to end, and I was very surprised by the ending. So I really enjoyed it. 5 out of 5 stars. Those are the books that I read in September and what I thought of them. I'd love to know in the comments what you read in September, what you liked, what you didn't. So drop a comment below. If you enjoyed this video today, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.